Welcome. Welcome. I'm excited. Ooh, okay. So, how is everyone doing? Hope the day, morning, evening, time zone, wherever you may be, finds you well. Um, I have lots of stuff to do today, in general. So, we'll have to see how far I can go with this stream. Uh-oh. Sorry about that. Something didn't do. Okay. Um, yeah, so today for Tabletop Workshop, what we're gonna do is... There we go. There's my... Let me put up my Krita. Please tell me that Krita is being captured. It is not being captured. Um... Let me see. Why is it not being... Okay. This is weird. This is not what should be happening. Capture method. Aha! There we go. Something's not right. Hold on. I'm sorry. OBS always... Okay, OBS does not like Krita for some reason. But here we are. Okay, so I have been organizing a game for a bunch of my VTuber friends, some of whom have never played a TTRPG before, or not really played a TTRPG before. And gonna get some music started. There we go. And so I thought, hey, why not run a game for them? Right, an introductory one shot just to get them, give them a taste of the hobby. And who knows, maybe they will want to play more later. So I was thinking, okay, just get them all together, get a one shot, and what I like to do is, whenever possible, let the players decide what kind of a genre or story or such they would like to play. Hey, Jess, welcome. Thank you for that, Pat. How are you doing? I hope everything is going well. We are doing some more game design today. So, yeah, a bunch of people who've never really played before. And where was I? Right. So I need a system. Good, getting ready to work on some recordings. How have you been? I've been good. I am going. I'm hopefully going to get my my residency work permit for Taiwan very soon. I should have all the documents ready, and I'm gonna go to the immigration office later. and then hopefully they'll accept everything, and then in a couple weeks, maybe in March, I will get my permit, and then I'm officially here. So yeah, it's been a journey. um, yeah, but hopefully that'll work out. So yeah, that's that's like the big hopeful uh what do you call that? I don't know what to call it, but like hopeful thing, just thingamabob that I've been looking forward to. And of course, playing more RPGs. I need to play more RPGs. Aspiration. That's a good word. Yeah, yeah. That fits. It's not entirely in my control, right? The government has to say yes, but the government already approved of all the other documents. They already said yes, I'm allowed to work. Now I only need to officially apply for the permit. So, um, like all the formalities should be done. Oh my goodness!
You must gather your party before venturing forth.
Ah, Joe, fallen raid. Speak of the devil, effectively. What were you doing? You were doing Lethal Company. Heyo. Nice, nice. How did that go? Did you make your capitalist overlords proud? Um. Yes. Yeah, I should have actually done that. All here. Um. Yeah, good streamers. Uh. Did you stream recently? Actually, Crime O'Clock. That sounds fascinating. I have no idea what that is, but it sounds fascinating. Um, but yeah, Joe is one of the people who is going to play in my one shot. Finish the stream before coming over. Ah, okay. So what is Crime O'Clock? Then I have to ask. It's a hidden object game with a mystery twist. Ooh, okay, nice. So probably more in the style of old school, more in line, not necessarily in style, but more in line with old school point and click adventures, which are also essentially hidden object games. Come to think of it. Yes. Okay, nice. I haven't played those in a long time. Holy heck. Those have really fallen out of popularity. Even though there's a couple of good ones. Um but yeah, Joe is one of the players in this introductory game. The story's actually really attention grabbing. Okay. I think that can make a huge difference. Like hidden objects, sure. Depends on how well they're hidden. But it's the story of these adventure games. Definitely. Jumping back and forth in time, trying to make sure the timeline doesn't fall apart by preventing. Okay, that sounds amazing. That sounds really amazing. I love me a good time travel story like that. That is so good. Okay. Crime O'Clock. I mean, okay, now the title makes a lot more sense. So yeah, seems about right. Um, so did you manage to finish the game, or are you somewhere in the middle and going, I need to complete this? Like some, I don't really remember how long event like games like that can be. it feels like they are either super short and you're done with them in like half an hour, or they take weeks to finish. I don't think I'm halfway through. Yeah, okay. There's no in between. It's either you completely get how the objects are hidden and how to combine things and what how the puzzles work and so on. You just get it and then you just blast through it, or it's so convoluted you just but still interesting that you just go, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing, but this is fun. Played for 3 hours? Dang, okay. Yeah, then and that's definitely one of the more like bigger gripping ones. Um I hope though it doesn't pull a weird like King's Quest twist on you where like you play for 10 hours and at some point you go, yeah, you made a mistake half an hour into your gameplay, so now you lose. Um so maybe hopefully it doesn't do that. Um but I guess we won't know until the game is done. Uh let me put down a title in here. Multiple crimes can take place in the same instance of time, and the percentage of completion for each crime per time period stabilization is less than the pre. Hold on. Multiple crimes can take place in the same instance of time. Okay. The percentage of completion for each crime per time period stabilization is less than the last time period. Oh, okay. So each crime you prevent repairs the timeline less and less. Okay, so you can't actually track your progress like that. If you go, oh, if it's 20%, I'll just solve 5 crimes, done. But it doesn't work like okay. Oh, that's devious. The game keeping itself a mystery. 80% in the first time period for stopping 4 crimes. Oof. Okay, so it could still be another 4 crimes or something, right? We don't know. Right. It's like you stop the big thing, but then all of the small ripple effects. Oh yeah. Yeah. Story doesn't let you stay in the same one until it's done. Ah. So you have to jump around. Okay. Um and yes, definitely. I'm always looking to play and hopefully I will be able to get more time to play. I need to reorganize my stream somewhat, really. Um Also because I might be getting a job, so that means less time for stream. Such. Is Did that come through? I hope it didn't come through. Someone was I think there's construction happening on outside and someone just dumped a whole pile of debris, or it sounds like someone just dumped a massive truckload of debris into a truck or something of that. I hope it didn't come through on the mic, but it was definitely loud even through my headset. So you didn't hear anything? Okay, good. Um so long. Yeah, always up to join things. Yeah, definitely. Uh Heck, uh maybe you could join this one even. I mean, we already have a time and date, so if that doesn't work for you, that's fine. Don't feel pressured. But like, I know it's for beginners, but it always helps having someone along who knows a bit what they're doing. um, so yeah, I can put you in on the Discords. Yeah. Like I said, this is the introduction game for a bunch of people. Joe is in it. Joe has only really played the Blades in the Dark game so far, and the other two, Vanilla is one of them as well, or Jins, I guess. And then another friend. Um, but yeah, I don't know if I have you on Discord. Maybe Joe can help out. Maybe Joe can put us into contact on Discord somehow. Uh, or we can find each other and then we can work something out. I have too much going on Discord. I don't know what's happening anymore. Um, but yeah, this is totally happening. It's happening in March. So yeah, March 13th, evening of March 13th in the US. Thursday, March 14th. Did I get that right? I hope I'm getting that right. Uh, March 13th, March. Yeah. So evening, March 13th in the US. Morning, well, not morning, like earlier in the day, March 14th in East Asia. And I've got my main experience in the one D&D campaign I'm doing now, a partial one that got cancelled. Don't give you a Discord name. Yeah, sure. If it's Wednesday, Thursday, I'm off that date. Ah, amazing. Yeah, if you're anywhere in the Americas, it'll be uh Wednesday evening for you. Um, yeah, basically this is an announcement. Hey, we're doing this. Beginners, more or less, not all absolute beginners, right? But different levels of beginner, somewhat experienced. Um, and we are going to play an eldritch horror Cthulhu mythos esque investigation game, right? So, oops, why is this not writing? Rita, please. Rita, what are you doing? Please let me. Ah. What? What's happening? Oh, I have. Ha 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 ha. I have the eraser selected. That. I shouldn't be writing using the eraser tool. That's probably not the best. Not the best idea. Okay, yeah. See, this is something I'm not getting used to on Krita. It's like the eraser is just another brush. So I have to select the brush, and then in the types of brushes I have on Krita here on the right hand side, the erasers are just a type of brush. So there we go. Now I can write. Okay. Let me put that in quotation marks. Okay. Discord. Ah, this. Oh, right. Yeah, I have a Discord command. I forgot I have a Discord command. Yes. um. Yeah. So I was thinking, I want a good system to run this beginner intro. Let's call it the intro game, the introduction game, right? Um, because system absolutely does matter, and I mean, I've been GMing for a while, but if I can offload things onto the system and not have to worry about them, then I will gladly do so. Right? And getting prompts or getting things said by the game master versus getting prompts from the system are different. So what do I mean by that? Essentially, let me put down a couple of things there. So, a couple of premises or a couple of ground foundational, not rules, but concepts, precepts. So, why is this still? Oh, I'm just pressing random buttons now. There. So the first one, system matters. Right? So a lot of times you will hear things like, "Oh, rules don't matter. I'm just here to hang out with my friends." Okay, but then you are fundamentally seeking a different type of entertainment than people who play the system, right? If and hanging out with friends is definitely a valid type of entertainment or fun, really, a valid type of fun and gameplay. Um, but that's not the only type, right? And I like playing with a bad system can also make hanging out with friends no longer fun. Just think about like sitting around a table playing Monopoly for 15 hours because that's the only board game anyone has, and um, it can dampen the experience versus playing a good board game or so. So the rule said the system definitely matters. So what this means is, um, and another argument a lot of people make is, oh, it doesn't matter if the system is bad. A great GM can make any game good. Yes, true. But if you require a great GM as part of the game, that literally means the game is bad. Why are you playing a bad game? Why aren't you playing a good game? So your great GM can channel their greatness into making the game good instead of fixing the bad system, making the gameplay experience good. Right? So, um, uh, so something like requiring a great GM means the system is bad slash incomplete slash unfitting, right? It can be bad in different ways. It could just be not the fit for your group, for the gameplay experience you want, right? Um, and that also then means GM greatness, to use the same term, is wasted on fixing the system instead of, oh my goodness, my handwriting today, making gameplay experience great. Right? So if the GM has to spend all of their effort and energy into fixing holes in the system or bending the system to make it fit your group, sure, a great GM can do that, but wouldn't you rather all that talent, all that skill, all of that energy be put into making the gameplay experience great, to bringing NPCs to life, to have good descriptions, to improvise well, to make the story exciting, and so on. Like, there's only so much mental capacity that a person has, and any of that mental capacity that is wasted on fixing the system is not available for making the game even better than it could be. Right? So this ties into there's ads going to be soon. I am going to write this down. This is the rule zero fallacy. And I'm going to introduce these concepts now. Rule zero fallacy. These are some sort of foundational things of why I'm even doing this. Like, if we're gonna play a Cthulhu Mythos style investigative scenario, why are we not just using something like Call of Cthulhu? Because Call of Cthulhu is not a great system, really, and I don't think it's a great system for beginners, definitely. And I would much rather design a system that does a lot of the work for me. So a rule zero fallacy is, how do I write this? So rule zero of any RPG, if a rule doesn't work for your table, right? Change it.
Endure. In enduring, grow strong.
Okay, ads are starting, so. Yeah, okay. So yeah, plus I like designing RPGs. I like designing games. It is a hobby. It's a legit hobby. And hopefully a job sooner rather than later. So I'm designing this game partially because I want to. Effectively, that's what I'm doing here. Oops. I need to select the correct brush. Okay. Is everyone back? Everyone is back. Okay. So yeah, rule zero fallacy. So rule zero, there's different ways of wording it, but rule zero is essentially if a rule doesn't work, or if something's missing in the game, if something is doesn't function as it should, change it. Right? You can always change the game. You can always add rules, remove rules, change rules, ignore rules, whatever. Right? That's kind of sort of the rule zero fallacy. Or not kind of sort of, that is the rule zero fallacy. And the rule zero fallacy is tied into this. Right? So the rule zero fallacy is saying the game system doesn't matter. There is no such thing as a bad system, because if a rule doesn't work, we can just change it, right? Rule zero. Except changing a rule admits that that rule was bad. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to change it. Again, bad not being an objective judgment necessarily, though some rules are objectively bad, but more incomplete or unfitting for your table, or just in some other way not fun for whoever is playing it right now, whoever feels the need to change it. And so it's basically saying, oh, it doesn't matter what game system we use, right? Because we can just change it. Rule 0, done. But again, changing the game system means it does matter, because then that the game system doesn't fit. It's kind of the premise and the conclusion are inverted in the Rule 0 fallacy, which makes it a fallacy, right? So the fallacy goes, no system is bad. Hold on, is this how to... What if I want to write it in actual logic form? So if I write it in actual logic form, right, you have like premise 1, any rule can be changed, right? Premise 2, this system has a bad rule. Is there a premise 3? No, there shouldn't. There need to be. And then the conclusion. I don't know if this is actual. If this is actually how you write it in logic. I'm just going to do it right now. Changing rules makes the system good. Something like that. This is what people say. This is the fallacy. The actual thing is, what is it? Yeah, it's the same. Any rule can be changed. Why am I doing this right now? Going so far into the theory. That same premises has a bad rule. And then the actual conclusion needs to be bad systems require change. Something like that. This is any logician looking at this right now is going to get a heart attack. But this is essentially what's going on here, right? So this is fallacious, right? All of this to say, there are systems that are better suited for beginners. There are 100% systems that are better suited for beginners. It's kind of like when you introduce someone to a board game, right? You don't introduce them to something like Twilight Imperium or Terra Mystica or something like that right away. You introduce them to something like Ticket to Ride, which is a lot easier to get into and a concept that's a lot easier to understand. And then if they say, oh, I like board games, right? And then they start exploring more and start getting into the mindset of how board games work and how to play them or what kinds of games they like. Then you can say, all right, let's try a session of Twilight Imperium, which will take 3 days, but okay. Things like that. Right, so there are definitely systems that are better suited for beginners. And if you pick a system that is worse suited for beginners, then the GM has to do additional work to make the system suited, either beforehand or during play. And if they have to do it during play, they are less capable in the sense of having the capacity at the moment of dealing with the beginner players themselves. Right? So, point 2. Beginner players may require more guidance. Right? Typically, role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games, are something that not a lot of people immediately slip into. And playing them is a bit of, I don't know what to do. It's the whole idea of, oh, I can do everything, right? The whole world is open to me. What do I do? What's happening now? And then they just get paralyzed by the amount of choice. And guiding them along and saying, oh, what could you do? How do you play a character? How do the rules work? How do you cooperate with the other players? How do you tell a story together? All of these things are pretty new for a lot of people. And therefore, they might need additional guidance, additional prompting, additional support from someone experienced, which is usually the game master. And if the game master has to instead put all of their mental capacity into running a broken system, they have less capacity left over to deal with all the teething aches that that beginner players might have. So again, this just reinforces, right? Beginner players GMs are usually the experienced ones. Not always, in which case it is even more imperative to have a great system, which is also why if you're trying to get into dungeon mastering, game mastering and any of that capacity, Dungeons and Dragons is a horrible system to do that. Because it is notorious for offering absolutely zero GM support. So don't do that to yourself. You'll psych yourself out, you'll stress yourself out, you'll become frustrated, and then you will wonder if GMing is good for you. Hello, Frosty Frog. Frosty Frog. Welcome. I found D&D to be pretty complex. The game Call to Adventure is supposed to allow you to build a character that can be used in D&D and was far easier to get into than when starting with no experience. Allow you to build a character. Okay. So Call to Adventure is what I assume it's an I haven't heard of it before, but I assume it's kind of like a level 0 character kind of game, where you start out and then by the end of the game you have a character to be used in D&D, if that's what I'm reading. And yes, totally, D&D is pretty complex. That's another thing. A lot of people who only play D&D look at the complexity in D&D, look at the rulebook and say, oh, this rulebook is 300 pages. It took me 2 weeks to even learn the gist of it, right? I don't want to learn other games. I don't have that time to spend. Let me introduce you to Lasers and Feelings. Lasers and Feelings can be taught in 2 minutes tops. Probably 30 seconds. So, not all games are like D&D. And yes, D&D is pretty complex. But more so than that, like, again, a good GM or a great GM can run D&D for beginners. But a lot of the things they are probably going to deal with is a lot of rules questions, right? It's like, oh, where do I find that number? Oh, what can my character do? Oh, what does this term mean? Oh, what does that do? Right? So it's a lot of rules questions rather than gliding into role playing. And that's, in my opinion, what a beginner system is supposed to do. We'll get to that in a bit. Call to Adventure has 3 story arcs, and each arc contains cards. Aha! You can choose a card to add to your character's background, and you work with other players to beat the boss. Right, right. I love that. I love using haptic props, in a sense, to to really help players. You got the boss after the third art, you fight 8. Ah, okay, okay. That's quite a lot then. Dang. But yeah, anything like cards or tokens or things like that that the players can take and look at and be like, oh, this is what I can do, or oh, this is what's happening in the game, or things like that, and that are good reminders. I love those things. Not just for beginners, for anyone. They're really, really good. But yeah, okay, I'll have to check that out. Call to Adventure. Not, oh, we got mobile autocorrect. No problem. It's all good. Um, so yeah, and let me finish this point, and then I'll go into the other point that was starting to come out. So GM are usually the experienced one, but only have so much mental capacity, right? Which is what I was talking about before. So, the more capacity is my handwriting is spent on rules or mechanics or, God forbid, fixing the system, right? The less attention players can get. And for experienced players who also know the system and aren't asking a whole bunch of rules questions, that is okay, right? They are independent to a certain degree. They can look things up themselves. When the game master says, "Give me this kind of check," or "Let's do this thing in the rules, this mechanic," they know what's happening. They can pick up the correct dice, or they can look up the correct values, or whatever, right? But for beginner players, where you cannot expect that, that will bog down play heavily. And you will not get through the story. The story will always be interrupted by rules clarifications, by explaining mechanics, which can take quite a bit of time, right? And then at some point the GM goes, you know what? We'll just wing it. You don't need to know the actual mechanic. I'll just handle everything. You just roll and give me the numbers. And then the GM has even more mental load that they need to dedicate to the mechanics and cannot properly pay attention to the players and their beginner problems and the story and NPCs and such. So it's a big mess. It's a big mess. So, in conclusion, um, some systems are better suited for beginners, right? And I'm, again, keeping in mind the whole GM mental load thing. Um, So again, Dungeons and Dragons. If you enjoy Dungeons and Dragons, awesome, right? Maybe don't give Hasbro any of your money after all of the stunts they've pulled last year and this year. It's only February, but yeah, they've already pulled a whole lot of BS. But other than that, if you enjoy D&D, if it's fun, yeah, okay, go ahead. Awesome. Just D&D is not the be all end all, and D&D is absolutely infamous for having horrific GM support. And by horrific GM support, I mean zero, nothing. GMs are left out to dry. Which is not good for beginner GMs, but which is also not good for experienced GMs trying to run this game for beginners, because then they have to do all of the work of making the system run. So, and a whole bunch of other games are a lot like this, right? If we are going to play a Cthulhu Mythos investigative scenario, why not use something like Call of Cthulhu? Again, because Call of Cthulhu also has a lot of problems. It also doesn't have a lot of GM support. The system is overwhelming. Thank you for the stretch and hydrate. All right. The system is pretty overwhelming. It has a lot of finicky math in there. It has a lot of stats and numbers in there that are just plain unnecessary for an Eldritch investigation scenario. And if you look at the history of Call of Cthulhu, it makes sense why the system is built like that, because it was never built for Eldritch investigation. It was a generic fantasy game. I forgot which one exactly. Hero Quest? Something along those lines? Hero Quest or Rune Quest or something. Very, very old game. And then they took the system and made it the basic role-playing game and made Call of Cthulhu in that system. Going to be heading to sleep, leaving stream in the background. I do want to note that I got the Solo Adventures toolbox, and I have to hope to play D&D by myself to learn the game and build up a story for my characters. Anyways, hope to get a night and great stream. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for being here. Definitely. I mean, yeah, again, if you want to play D&D, if you think D&D is fun, that's great. I'm not saying D&D is a horrible don't play game. There are actual horrible don't play games out there in terms of RPG. D&D is far from those. I'm saying you could do better. Is essentially what I'm saying. And again, D&D is without question the largest role-playing game in the world. Absolutely. Even though Hasbro is doing a good job of diminishing that, corporation's gonna corporate. So D&D is being commodified, being corporate-fied. I do believe that D&D as a game, the quality of D&D as a game is going to decline. Because now a corporation has its greasy fingers in it. And the way D&D is going to be designed and marketed is no longer game quality, but monetization opportunity. They've already openly stated that that is their goal. The people running Hasbro and Wizards have openly stated that's what they want to do with D&D. And that means that future decisions for the game, including design decisions, are going to be geared toward monetization at the expense of game quality. We have seen this happen in the video game sphere, right? All those AAA live service games I cannot say it like Stephanie Sterling. They do it amazingly. Live service. You know, they're all about monetization, and the games are crap. Have to head out to get dinner. All right, yeah. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for the raid, and have a great dinner. Um, so I do believe the quality of D&D as a game is going to decline because it'll be filled with whatever ability to monetize things. And there's no limit what might be possible. Heck, you could buy the core player's handbook and there might be a single ancestry and a single class in it, and if you want further classes to play, there are DLC books. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Um, thank you, Joe. You know, that's the kind of things that corporations are likely to pull. So, I'm worried. I am worried. I don't want to see D&D die. It is a big game, and I got into RPGs with it. I want to see it be better. But to become better, like, you have to be able to point out its flaws. And then you have to say how to fix those things. And that's yeah, it's a big conversation. It's not easy to have anyway, anyway. I veered off topic for an entire hour, basically. So the basic premise is I need a good system to help me do a lot of the work. Right. Um, I want a system, and again, this is personal preference, but I know my playing style. I know how I run games, and especially a mystery game, an investigative game. As a GM, you need to be on your toes, right? Because it's not like running a simple dungeon where the characters can just kind of go from room to room and then you have each room being an isolated encounter and then you just run that thing in that moment. No, as a mystery, you have to have the entire mystery present. You need to know where the parts are moving, which things the players already know, and how to move forward. So I want a system um, that uh, helps with ideally with running the game, right? Those are the best systems. And guiding the players. If the system can help guide the players into role playing, into um, figuring out what playing an RPG is like, um, then again, I as a GM can deal with individual issues or questions or give better situational prompts built on top of what the game is already providing. Oh, hey! Hello, Leo. Hi, how are you doing? It's nice to have you here. How goes it? Um, you're doing well. That is great to hear. I hope it's not too warm where you are. Glad to see you stream. Yeah, glad to be streaming. Really, I need to make this more regular again. Or I have been. I took a break over Chinese New Year, so I'm and every break feels like I need to get back into the rhythm, which is difficult for me. But yeah, I am glad to be back, and I'm glad you're here. It's really cold here. It's snowing. Oh no! Oof! Wow, we had a heat wave the last few days. Not anymore, but the last few days we definitely had a heat wave. 30 degrees is crazy. It's not right. This shouldn't be happening. And it really shouldn't. But I guess enjoy the snow while it lasts. While you still have it. Um where yeah. Um so yeah, I want a system that helps with guiding the players. So what do I mean by that? Hold on, let me may put in a new thing. So we're designing a game today for a bunch of complete newbies. Well, not. I keep saying it, a bunch of complete newbies. That's not true. It's not 100% true, but you know. There we go. That's what I wanted. I cannot. I cannot. What is happening? Oh my goodness. What am I doing? Krita, please. I don't understand anymore. There was a way for me to drag this. I forgot how. There was a way for me to drag the canvas. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. So, what?
Endure.
Oh,
In enduring
there's an
grow
ad playing.
strong.
Okay, let me just write down the title. What does the system need to do? Right. I should really stop rambling, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if the rambles are interesting or not. I just do them because I have so many thoughts on these topics. Um so I guess eh, it's I guess it's a thing. But if they do become too annoying, if too many people say the rants are annoying and the rambling is annoying, I should just get to the point, even though I don't know what the point is. I think that's the problem. I don't know what the point is. But if I need to figure out what it is and then just get there, please let me know. Please let me know if the rantings are superfluous. Uh, and I should just press on. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So yeah, what does the system need to do? Right? What is required of the system? So the first is low rules complexity. This is kind of sort of a no-brainer, right? This is just saying the players should not be overwhelmed. How am I Am I overwhelmed by the rules? Either or not either. And then in things like number of different abilities, um, mechanics, with many steps, right? Some mechanics might take 5, 6, 7 steps until they're resolved. Loads of modifiers, or what was the word? Statistics, as in character statistics, etc. Right? So it's like, oh, are you lurking? Thank you for the lurk. So things like, oh, I'm trying to make a simple die roll, but maybe I need to search my entire character sheet and gather the 5 different modifiers that all apply to this one single die roll. Then that is still complex, right? Because I have to know what modifiers apply to this roll. I have to know where they are on my character sheet. I have to do all of the math of adding and subtracting various things together, and so on and so forth. And while that doesn't sound super complex the way I said it, it's still like it happens every time you roll, and that can slow down the game massively depending on how often you roll. And if you roll quite often in the game, then that is definitely going to slow game down to a crawl, because players will be scanning their character sheets all the time, and then maybe they're just looking at this character sheet going, oh, what can I do, what can I do, wait, why is there a random +2 here, what does that mean, right? What is this +2, what is that -1, right? And it's just overloading with information. Same with if every character has like 10 different abilities that they need to keep in mind all the time to see, oh, can I use this ability now? Oh, or when can I use this ability? And then when the situation comes up where they can use it, they forget that they have it because they're keeping in mind 9 other abilities the character has, and so on and so forth, right? So, and abilities don't need to be active; they can also be passive, which is sometimes worse, because then the character needs to be constantly aware that, oh, this situation is now here. Now this passive ability springs into effect, and then they might forget. And if the GM has to keep all of those things in mind, again, we just talked about that, right? If the GM has to keep, if every character has 10 abilities and you have 4 characters sitting, 4 players, right? The GM has to keep in mind 40 abilities. It's like, good luck running the game at that point, right? So you need an absolute great experienced GM. But then we run into the problem we just described. Why not use that mental load instead to make the game better? So yeah. So players should not be overwhelmed by the rules. And you never know. Players might be confused by some things where people who've played a bunch of role-playing games don't even think of them. Like if you use the whole set of polyhedral dice, some players, especially players when they just start out, will be immensely confused by which die is what. Right? You just tell them roll a d12, and then they look at all of the dice and have to ask, is this a d12? No, that's a d8. Oh, is this a d12? No, that's a d20. Oh, is this a d12? No, that's a d10. Right? So they might not instinctively recognize dice like that. And some players might take a long time until they can recognize the shapes of dice and instinctively tell, oh, roll a d10. Oh, okay, I will roll a d10, and then they will immediately pick up the correct die. Not necessarily. So that's like, there's a lot of small things like that, which I'm gonna say veterans of the hobby don't even think about, but that can definitely trip up beginners. Also, if you use a lot of terms, technical terms in your game, right? If you have like your character level, if you have spell level, if you have hit points, if you have your ability score, if you have things, all of these terms, right? It's like, give me a, I don't know, a will saving throw. And it's like, okay, where do I see that? And then they don't see will saving throw on their character sheet. And then you have to explain, oh, no, you have to go to this section, and then it's that number because of this. It's like, huh? What's going on, right? To be fair, the percentile dice are a bit confused. Yes. The whole idea of, oh, you roll 2 dice and you read them like that? And to this day, people don't know what a 000 is supposed to represent. And there's still arguments at the table. I've been in them. That's another reason not to run Call of Cthulhu, because Call of Cthulhu runs on the percentile dice. It's a percentile skill system. So, yeah. So definitely agree. Percentile dice, they're cool, and it's a really genius way of having actual 100 percentiles allocated like that with an even chance. But you need to know what you're doing. So that low rules complexity, that's one. Then give my handwriting, I'm hating it today. Give and then I make, okay, spelling mistakes. Prompt, that's how you spell it. Yes. For role playing. And I think this is a big one. This is a very, very big one. What do I mean by role playing? I do not mean acting. Acting and role playing are 2 separate things, right? You do not have to speak in first person. You do not have to use a voice or an accent or something. You do not have to act out what it is your character is saying or doing or so. That is play acting. That is doing theater, basically. Sure, that can be a lot of fun. That can be very impressive or very entertaining. No doubt. But that is not necessary. A lot of people are when they think about, oh, I have to roleplay, does that mean I have to talk in a weird voice? I don't know how to do voices. And then suddenly the barrier of entry becomes that much higher. And that's not necessary, right? Interactions, getting involved in the world and becoming part of it, that's how to describe it. Yeah, that is definitely a large part of it. So role-playing is essentially making decisions as your character, right? The getting into your character's mindset, and the good way of doing that's what my character would do, in a sense, right? So helping the players understand, oh, it's okay to get into the mind of a different person, give you prompts of how to shape the character, how to shape the story, and prompts of what to do, right? Interactions, social interactions, or interactions with the world in general. Hi, Capsize. How are you doing? Thank you for lurking. And yeah, basically being in the narrative. Okay, the music is getting pretty loud. Hold on. I may need to turn it down slightly. Okay. Yeah, I hope your time zone is going well. So the way I tend to use that term is with role playing game. If you look at the term role playing game, right, there are two parts to that term. One part is role playing, the other part is game. And that's my interpretation of it. I know some people who agree and some people who vehemently disagree. That's fine. There is no clear definition of the term role playing, and the hobby is so broad that you can like that a lot of games can fit under the umbrella, should fit under the umbrella, right? And the more there is, the better for the hobby. But my interpretation of this term and of role playing in opposition to game is essentially you have the mechanics and the rules and the systems. That's the game portion. And then you have the narrative, the characters, the interactions, the storytelling. That's the role playing part of the game. And if you bring them both together in harmony, then you get a role playing game. Right? So pure game would be something like a board game, usually. Oh my goodness, it's a vanilla. How are you doing? How goes? Uh that work? Did that not work? What is happening? Why is my shout out not going out? Oh, does it need the at? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. My shout out command is broken. Oh, wrong name. I missed the E. Vanilla Blue Bob. It's still vanilla. It's still broken. It's broken. I am gonna worry about it because my shoutout command is broken. Why? The thing is, Joe used it earlier in the stream and it worked perfectly. And now, streamer bot, what are you doing? Is there some other? Is there something else? It's not a Twitch problem. It's a streamer bot problem. Uh oh. Okay, I have these in different. Hmm. Uh oh. So I have a queue for Twitch alerts so that they don't overlap and cancel each other out. My fear now is that something is still running in the background, occupying the Twitch alerts queue. Get target info from input. Commands shout out. SO. Yeah. So something might still be running in the background. Delay for this? Yeah, no, it should be. Do I have to put an end action in there? It used to work. I don't know. Okay. Well, now I know. Now I know something is busted. So, like it worked earlier when Joe raided. It did the shout out correctly, and then Joe did a manual shout out, and that worked. And now it's broken. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe you can try. Actually, yeah, you might be able to try. VIPs can do shoutouts. Shout yourself out. do it for the test. Do it for the tech test. It's Joe's fault. I'll blame Joe. But yeah. Where was I? Right, role-playing game. Yes, role-playing game. So a game is essentially like a board game, right? Where you have what if it's not letting you because it does the response from my account? It shouldn't. I've been able to do shoutouts before. So yeah, I don't know what's is there. Hold on. There's okay, I have this weird redeem setup. Maybe that's interfering with it. Then to the Twitch message, sends shout out, play sound, source visibility. Yeah, I don't know. Let me check actually. Okay, now I'm curious. Now I am curious. SO alert. I'm curious how far it got into the command. It didn't do anything. Okay, that's still the old info. So it didn't grab anything. What's supposed to happen is that the name should be changed to the name and the profile image should be changed to whoever is being shouted out, and it didn't even do that. So the entire alert is just broken. It's not doing anything to it. Nice. Okay, streamer bot. Why you do this? Okay. Anyway, so yeah, Vanilla is also one of the players in this beginner game. So yeah. Where was I? Role-playing game again. Okay, so you can have basically just rules, just mechanics. That would be something like a board game. And while you could role play over a board game, and some people do, the role playing does not do anything to the game itself. right? If you play Monopoly and you're all pretending to be actual real estate capitalists, it hates you. Oh no! What did you do to StreamerBot? Um, right? Sure, you can do that, and that might be a lot of fun for you. But the role playing doesn't do anything to the game itself. The game mechanics play the same way, whether you're role playing or not. I might have beat them up that one time. Oh no, that's not great. Right? Whereas if you have pure role playing, that's a bit harder to define, but maybe something akin to improv theater, right? Is kind of sort of pure role playing. Role playing just adds to the fun. Yes, exactly. And there are a lot of people who do that, and some people who do suggest for certain games that role playing it might be better. Like there was this one group I was with, one board gaming group I was with, who wanted to play Diplomacy. And Diplomacy, for those of you who don't know, is an extremely cutthroat board game. It is, as the name implies, all about diplomacy. It's all about lying and bluffing and backstabbing, right? Because there is no random chance in the game. Diplomacy, the setup is basically you are playing European powers in the 19th, 20th century, somewhere around there. Back when Europe was still a bloody mess. Well, it still is. It's just not bloody anymore. Um, and and basically, you play one of the big powers. You play something like Prussia, France, England, or Britain, Russia, and things like that, right? Austria-Hungary, and you move your troops around and you try to invade territory and such. But the way combat works is simply you have to have more troops in a territory than the person you're fighting, and the best way to do that is to have someone else fighting with you, and you both move the troops into that territory, and then you win. There's no die rolling, there's no cards, there's no bluffing on, oh, how many troops am I actually having to fight, blah. Nothing. That is a pure numbers game. And so you must, like Risk, not quite, because Risk has die rolling. It's far from Risk, yeah, because Risk has die rolling. If you roll really, really lucky, you can have a small force defend against a huge army, right? But in Diplomacy, it's literally you move a bunch of cubes into the territory, and the enemy has a bunch of cubes, and then you just remove one from each side until there's only one type left, one player left. Um, and that's how it works. So there's no surprises in the combat. So you must make alliances and say, if you're playing Prussia, you might say, yo, Austria-Hungary, let's go invade this territory together and kick out the Russians. And then you both move in there, and then suddenly Austria-Hungary plus Germany, Prussia, or whatever it's called in the game, has more troops in there than Russia does. And then they lose, and then right after that, Austria-Hungary goes, psych, I'm gonna take this territory for myself, and I'm gonna now beat you because you have one dude in there and I have two, right? And that's a lot of backstabbing and things like that. And it can get really rough. Gameplay might be faster. Not really. Not really. It's not fast. It's definitely not fast. And so someone suggested to play that game, and then he said, as a security measure, we will role play this game. How long would I say? Several hours, probably. It is quite a big game. Definitely. It is a fairly old game, and old games tended to be very long, like that. I've never played it, but from what I've read, it usually lasts several hours. Um, but yeah, so the player who suggested we play Diplomacy then said, to save everyone's sanity and to make sure we don't kill each other in real life afterwards, we will role play as leaders of these powers, right? To say, so when I'm backstabbing someone, I'm not doing it as me, the player. I'm doing it as Bismarck or something, right? Chancellor of Prussia. So you can totally do that. But whether or not you roleplay doesn't change the gameplay mechanics. So that's the game portion. I just wanted to be chaotic. I didn't suggest the game, okay? I didn't suggest that. It was someone else who did. I didn't even know the game existed back then. So whether or not you roleplay doesn't change how the game mechanics function, or which game mechanics you use, and so on and so forth. And then pure role playing would be something like improv theater or collaborative storytelling or things like that, where you don't have mechanics. You might have some creative limitations. We are telling this kind of story, right? Or someone doesn't know the situation and we are just role playing that. Like, whose line is it anyway? Right? Sure, they have games with some creative limitations in there and some prompts, but those aren't rules, those aren't mechanics, right? They're just there to help help the creativity. And yeah, the points literally don't matter. So that is pure role playing. And if you get a synthesis of the two, you get a role playing game where the mechanics influence the narrative and the character choices, and in turn, the narrative and character choices influence the mechanics. That is important, and that is my interpretation of the term role playing game. And the game portion is easy to teach newcomers. The role playing part, not so much. And so, for a system, I need clear prompts for role playing, clear ways and how. As we'll start.
Grow strong.
But yeah, that's basically it. I will continue after. But no, seriously, if you want to watch some board gaming that has role playing being done to it, so to speak, there is this web series called Tabletop, hosted by Will Wheaton. And in it, he just invites a bunch of his other nerdy friends and they play various board games together. And some of the board games, because the people he invites are actors and such, they really, really get into playing their characters or telling the story together, even though the game doesn't include any of that. All they have is like, oh, I have this little colored dude, right? It's really just, oh, I'm playing this red wooden pip, and the other person's like, I'm playing this green wooden pip. But then they create characters like, my name is Dr. Whatever, and I do this thing, and then they do their funny voices and they tell stories together. And it's hilarious and entertaining to watch. But the game they play doesn't change because of it. All right, welcome back, everyone. So, playing around with the mechanics of some things in games, older or new, are fun, especially with how it helps you interact with the world. A character in Strixhaven is a Circle of Dreams wizard, and multiclassing into Divination wizard. Till I hit level 5, I'm restricting my 2 daily rolls to allocate 4 total rolls. When I roll the 2 for the day, I'll roll a d4 and I'll decide whether I lose the chance to use it because of inexperience or decides what I can use it to replace. Circle of Dreams Druid, right. It's like, how do you multiclass from wizard to wizard? I thought that was forbidden. Um, and yes, you can definitely do things like that. You can definitely build mechanics that influence how you roleplay your character to a certain degree. Um, and that, what am I trying to say here? Uh, and that is definitely a thing you can put into your game, and that is one of the directions of how to put role playing and mechanics together. The other direction is sometimes a bit harder ish. The other direction being the narrative influencing the mechanics. So on a 1, I lose the roll. On a 2, I can use it for attack rolls. On a 3, saving throws. On a 4, skill checks. For each level until level 5, the die gets bigger. Ooh, okay, okay. Um, okay, okay. So it's more in line of getting a random prophecy and not controlling what you do. And that can certainly work. What color do I have? Okay, green. So um have mechanically meaningful character traits that either rely on or drive role playing. If this is very theoretical, it'll get a lot clearer once I go into the specifics. Yes, she's usually fully attuned to the powers anyway. That is cool. Yeah, like making a mechanic in such a way that it really drives home the theme of the character. That is a really cool thing. Um so yeah. And this is something I see the point I just wrote down. Right? Have mechanically meaningful character traits that rely on or drive role playing. This is literally saying I am trying to connect mechanics and role playing. In some games, uh, the connection is very loose. My DM's been having trouble giving me things to expand on my characters. I'm trying to think of things to help him. Yeah, see that is a great thing to do. And that is something you can definitely do once you understand the system a bit more and understand role playing a bit more. But that is not something to expect from beginners, right? So yeah, that's exactly what I said earlier. If you have players who are more experienced, they can be independent, they can help the GM, they can drive the game themselves. Well, not drive the game themselves, but they can help do their part, so to speak, right? Um, to to drive the narrative and make the game better. Kind of count as a beginner for this campaign. Yeah, but you know, you've played before. I remember you telling me of other role playing ventures you've done, RPG ventures, and it's very different from looking at this weird sheet with the numbers and words for the first time in your life and picking up a die that is not six-sided and going, what the heck is this thing? Right? It's very different. But I like to write stories, so I have experience in developing character. That is very good. Yes. Transferable skills. So yeah, if you have any experience in board gaming or in improv theater or in writing stories or anything like that, you will find it much easier to slip into role playing games. Um, and you can see that as well with more experience. Like if you watch certain let's plays, is it let's plays? Actual plays? Actual plays is what they're called. Of role playing games. I mean, obviously the biggest one, Critical Role, is a whole bunch of actors, right? This is literally their job, playing a character. So, yes, they know what they're doing. Other times, then they invite guests. Sometimes those guests are writers for TV shows, for example. Same thing. Those people understand how characters work, how stories work. They will get into it really easily, right? Um, so or people who do a lot of improv game shows or improv theater, right? Uh, Again, these people thrive on creating entertaining narratives with other people. So and are very quick on their feet. Um, and yeah, so these people can slide into a role playing game very easily. But you cannot expect that of people. You cannot expect them to have these skills and then throw them into a role playing game and say, do your thing. Ideally, the role playing system, the game system, helps support people who don't have these skills. That's what I'm trying to do here. My character is attending the college at the magic school in where written words texts are given power to be held. And that's part of what's playing into the divination side for me, instead of just vocally recounting a divination as it happens. Minstrel spaces spaces out and writes it down and unknowingly imbues it with magic. Ooh. To influence said event in a particular way. Okay, that is really cool. I love that flavor. So it's kind of sort of like crafting scrolls for extremely specific magical effects, but I love that. In fact, that reminds me a bit of Tamio, also from Magic the Gathering, uh, who does something very similar. All of her magic is written down on scrolls. To a degree, yes. Sorry. All right. Um, yeah, that is really cool though. Strixhaven campaign is growth over MTG. Yes, there are several. Like I haven't I haven't done any Strixhaven in Magic the Gathering, but I do know there are several settings that have been made into D&D books, D&D setting books. Silver Quill is the college. Ah, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I only know Strixhaven is a magical college with 5 schools in it, uh, according to color groupings. Um, so yeah, but I don't know too much beyond that. I do know there is a source book for it for D&D. Okay. Where was I? Um, what am I looking at? Right. So this is the requirements of the system. So these two first points are more geared towards the whole this is for beginners, right? Low rules complexity and give prompts for role playing. I mean, I like prompts for role playing in my systems anyway. Because there's a lot of good interconnectedness you can get with the role playing and the mechanics, the narrative and the mechanics. But I this is especially helpful, I think, for beginners. Civil Code has to do with good and negative aspects of words. Lorehold deals with like mathematics and equations. Prismari is elementals. Witherbloom is life and death, and Quandrix. Okay, right. So those are the 5 colleges. So Lorehold is likely something like white blue. Prismari is elementals, which is probably. Wait, is it allied or enemy color pairs? I forgot. I think it might be enemy color pairs. In which case, Prismari is red-blue, and Lorehold might be white-black? Something like that? Silverquill white-red? Witherbloom life and death? Oh no, life and death is... Oh no, wait, life and death is green-black? And Quandrix would be red-white... No. Blue-green. Prismari's red-blue, Winter Witherbloom... Yeah. I mean, just from... This is... you just have to marvel at the genius of magic design in this instance. And ties nicely into the point I'm trying to make here. In Magic, the lore is hard-baked into the game mechanics. So if you look at the very, very early sets of Magic, the colors were just kind of there to make sure no one can build super decks and to make people have to choose. But there was no color wheel. There was no color identity. There was nothing really separating the different colors of Magic other than the type of mana they used. And then Mark Rosewater came along, who is lead designer for Magic now, has been for like since forever. And he basically started saying, yo, this is potential. We have the 5 colors here. Why not make these 5 colors mechanically distinct? And the mechanics of the Magic colors are based on the lore that these colors represent. And so that became a whole thing. They have the whole color wheel. And if you look at descriptions of the color wheel, all the descriptions are lore, are narrative, are quote unquote role playing, right? It's all, white is all about community, the good of the whole versus the good of the one. Law and order, right? Light. And then red is all about emotion and fire and change and so on. And you have all of these narrative aspects defining each color, but then they get manifested as mechanics, right? So red is all about fire and emotion and impulsiveness and chaos and destruction. So they get a lot of burn spells. They get a lot of artifact destruction. They get a lot of small, quick minions, creatures. That's the word. Creatures with haste, for example, or first strike, right? Whereas blue is the color of thought and logic and water and air, and so they get a lot of flying. They get a lot of counter spells, and things like that. And flying creatures and counter spells and control spells, those are mechanics that are derived from the narrative and lore of the color. And that is beautiful. And this color wheel is so tight, has been adhered to so well over the years that you can look at the lore of something and see what colors they are. right? So here, silver quill has to do with good negative aspects of words. Okay, what is good negative? White black, right? Lower hold deals with mathematics and equations. That is most likely. Uh, hold on. What is mathematics? Blue, definitely blue. Blue green, possibly blue green. Right. If you look at nature as one big equation, being in balance, and then blue is all about knowledge and logic. Lorehold might be blue green. Prismari's elementals. Well, that's red blue. That's where all the elementals live. Fire and earth elementals in red, water and air elementals in blue. Right. Witherbloom is life and death. Oh, that's easy. It's green black. Green is life, black is death. And then Quandrix is whatever is left over. Red green. No. What is left over? White red. White and red is left over. We can't infer the exact lore from that because each color's lore is relatively broad, but just looking at the lore, you can tell the mechanics. And that is an excellent, excellent example of tying together mechanics and lore, or mechanics and narrative, right? Obviously, Magic is not a role-playing game. So it doesn't translate one-to-one to that, but it does show what is possible if you are very stringent in your approach to the game design. And if you look at the game design as not just a game in this case, but also a storytelling medium. And you have the storytelling, that's the word I was looking for, the storytelling hard baked into the mechanics. And that is what I hope for role playing games, that you have the narrative and the storytelling and the role playing and character stuff, all of that good thing, hard baked into the mechanics to a certain degree. Quandrix is substance and theory. Lorehold is more specifically chaos and order. Okay, chaos and order, easy, white, red. White being order, chaos, and red being chaos. And substance and theory is substance and theory. That sounds like blue green. That sounds like blue green. So what is mathematics? What's missing? Doesn't matter. You can probably look it up. But yeah. Lorehold's mascot is a fractal. Hence the math stuff. Ooh, that's interesting. Okay. But yeah. So just taking magic as an example of how it is totally possible, not just possible to hard bake storytelling into the mechanics, but how it makes the game as a whole better when you do that deliberately, when that is your goal, right? So yeah, same for role playing games. If it's somehow possible to hard bake storytelling, narrative, character role playing into the mechanics, then that is good, right? Because then it's not, oh, you're playing a game and you're doing some role playing on the side, or you're role playing and you're rolling a couple dice on the side. No, if the two are actually in synthesis, then that makes for a stronger experience, in my opinion. Right? Some people might disagree, but this is my definition of role playing game, and this is my design goal, my overarching design goal. Quandrix is the one with math and fractal mascot. Okay. It's all good. It's a lot to keep track of. Right. So this is what I'm trying to say here. And the most basic thing is give prompts. right? So you have prompts in the game or on your character that are mechanically relevant, but which are tied into role playing. So you have either, if I draw a really quick illustration, you can have something like a mechanic, right? Like this. And then the things that influence the mechanic are role playing or narrative. I'm just going to use this term, role playing. Starting from the most basic version of this is when you do something in the game that will activate this mechanic. That is the most basic version. So something like, I am trying to climb this wall, therefore that activates the athletic skill check mechanic, right? So climbing the wall is narrative, and the narrative activates the mechanic of athletic skill check. And then you have something that comes out of it, right? And that then influences some other aspect of the role playing. And this is a little bit more difficult. This one is not seen nearly as often. The first step is super easy, right? I make this character choice, and that character choice leads to this mechanic being used, right? You can go a lot more complex than that. You can say how the mechanic gets used, how modifiers are applied, what other mechanical decisions you make, all depend on the narrative, right? You could have things like, oh, but if I use a rope, which is a narrative decision, I get a bonus on my check, which is a mechanical effect, right? That is a step more complex and also not often seen in games, but that is one way of making this relationship tighter. Usually, what you will then see is that the mechanic has effects on other mechanics. Right? So, for instance, oh, you failed a check, you fall. Okay, that's a narrative thing, but more importantly, you take some damage from the fall. That is a mechanical consequence. And sure, you can have all of these relationships like that. You can also have mechanics that lead into a certain check you're making, for example, right? For instance, a stat bonus or training in a skill. And all of these can exist at the same time, but sometimes these connections are stronger than these connections. And they can then overshadow the role playing decisions. Also, this one, the connection of mechanic leading to role playing is usually very, very weak. And like one game where you can see this very strongly is Powered by the Apocalypse games. Because every single mechanic is, when this thing happens in the narrative, use this mechanic. After you've used this mechanics, here are some prompts of how the narrative develops. And this is like written into the rules, written into the mechanics themselves. And that makes this bond very, very strong. And few mechanics affect other mechanics. Right? That doesn't really happen all that much. Some do, but that's not the main focus. The main focus is narrative is happening, and then something happens that triggers a mechanic. Okay, we resolve the mechanic, and then the mechanic says, okay, and now here are some ways how the narrative will develop. Here are some prompts. Go and take it, and then play your narrative. Right? And that is elegant but powerful. And that is something I want to see, right? where you have something mechanical on the sheet, but in order to use that, or in order to benefit from it, or some other way, you have to do role playing to it. That's what I'm trying to accomplish here. Luckily, I don't have to design that whole cloth. That's already been done for me. Right, so yeah, just adapt systems. Okay, what else? Make the effects of the mythos direct, which leads to risk reward. What do I mean by that? So, typically, the theme of Cthulhu Mythos investigative stories is that human minds are not made to understand the mythos in any way, shape, or form. If we try to look at it or delve into it or worse, understand it, we go insane because our minds are too fragile. We cannot handle it. And the risk reward aspect is basically sometimes I need to understand some of the mythos in order to understand what's going on in the mystery that I'm investigating in order to solve it. But how much do I delve into it? How much do I risk understanding the mythos? Right? Sometimes a little peek is good enough, and then it opens up new paths in the investigation. Sometimes that little peek is going to be too much, and my mind breaks just a little bit more. And that's the risk reward aspect, right? So let me write that down while the ad is going to start playing. So make a mental break of engaging with mythos. Consequential.
Endure.
But
in enduring, grow strong.
Engaging with mythos might make investigation easier. Right? So that's what I said. Sometimes reading a passage from the Necronomicon will help you understand what's going on, but then your mind might go, "Nope, I did not like that," or it might not. Right? That's where dice rolls come in. Dice rolls are an amazing tool for that. And also, mm, no, never mind. I'm not going to put that in there. That's something for later. Mm. Is there anything else? All right, welcome back. I guess the most basic and I'm only writing down this point because then it'll make sense why I'm designing a game instead of using one that already exists. Be a good fit for horror plus investigation. This is a horrible way to write that. Games. Okay, so essentially, RPG rule sets are rarely generic. Generic meaning they can fit any type of story or any type of genre is a bad word to use for this, right? And play style, kinda. So the more limiting tropes a certain style or genre has, the more specific the game needs to be able to run that successfully. Right? So horror, for instance, has quite a few limits. Horror relies on things like the PCs being, or not just the PCs, horror stories. So it relies on the protagonists being outmatched by something. It relies on them being more helpless, having less agency. Right? A typical horror story is not about beating the monster or beating whatever is doing the horror. It is about escaping or surviving. Or not surviving. That's usually how a lot of horror stories end, right? So it's not about the PCs, or I keep saying PCs, not about the heroes being actual big heroes saving the day. It's about them being more reactive than most heroes in other stories, having less agency, and just trying to outlast the horror for as long as possible, right? And you can definitely play games like that in role-playing games. Sure, but not every system will work. If a system is specifically designed to make the PCs, say, competent or heroic, or to tell stories that or have mechanics that give the PCs a lot of agency, that those systems will not fit too well with horror stories. Right. That's what I mean when I say not like systems are rarely generic. So using Dungeons and Dragons, for example, to run a horror game, you could maybe make it work, but generally Dungeons and Dragons PCs have a lot of powers, a lot of tools at their disposal, a lot of agency, and a lot of, very importantly, controlled agency. A lot of things, like if they attempt a task, whether or not they'll succeed or how they'll succeed is not guaranteed, but is very predictable. It's not a good or bad thing. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that's how Dungeons and Dragons plays, and that these traits of the game system itself make it a bad fit for horror stories. Generally, I know Curse of Strahd is gothic horror and is one of the most successful, probably the most successful module for D&D. But it would have to either change the game mechanics somewhat, add rules to simulate the horror, or it has to change the type of horror, like into gothic horror, which is not like modern horror stories. Gothic horror is a bit different. It's gothic horror is the type of horror where you can actually beat the bad guy, right? Heck, Dracula in the original story, I think, gets staked. Sure, he does a lot of bad things, and the protagonists suffer, but they always face this challenge with the idea of we can beat this, we can triumph, right? And that is a completely different attitude and mindset than modern horror, like haunted house horror, where it's like, oh, we're locked in here for the night. We're probably all going to die, and then one person survives, maybe. Right? It's very, very different types of stories. So therefore, if you want to play a horror scenario, the game has to fit, and also investigation scenario. Some games are not fit for investigative scenarios, not just because the mechanics don't support it. Again, in Dungeons and Dragons, the mechanics don't necessarily support investigative scenarios. You can still play them, right? But there are games out there that actively hinder investigative scenarios by the way the mechanics are set up. And so I need a game system that that doesn't destroy an investigative scenario just by the players using the mechanics as intended. So, what is it I'm actually going to do? Now, there is this amazing, amazing game system called Fate Accelerated. Fate Accelerated. Fate Accelerated, what that does is based on the Fate system, Fate core system, which Fate Accelerated, by the way, is free. It is a very short book. It's like something like 20 pages, with a lot of illustrations and examples. So very quick to learn. And it's the system I have used to introduce 3 separate groups of beginners to the hobby, and every single time it has worked wonderfully because the system does so much of the heavy lifting for me. Right? So it does a lot of heavy lifting. It has good RP prompting. Right? A very, very simple yet powerful base core mechanics, right? So it does things like you have to look at the narrative, you have to look at what is being set up, and that influences the mechanics, and then the mechanics give you prompts for further role playing, right? Also, because of it has graded success, you have failed, success with cost, pure success, even great success, right? Things like that. So it gives you a lot of different ways the story could develop. However, where it doesn't fit this particular game is it has very come on very competent PCs and high degree of narrative agency. So the players can influence the narrative in a lot of ways. And that absolutely destroys investigative scenarios. So the players can influence the situation in the game, the narrative situation. They can influence story details and so on. For an investigative scenario, for any sort of mystery scenario, that is poison. Because suddenly the PCs are creating the mystery as they are solving it. Right, they're creating clues, and then you as a GM go, "But that's not what the mystery was leading. That's not how it goes." So that doesn't work. In fact, the game itself says, the rule books themselves say, "Yeah, this system not really fit for horror games, not necessarily a good fit for investigative games, and so on. You might want to tweak it if you play that," and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So it is a great system, and I do suggest everyone try it. It will open up your world to what is possible with RPGs. Um, or you can just watch it being played. The show I mentioned before, Tabletop by Will Wheaton. One of the sessions is him playing Fate Core, which is the base system, with a bunch of other people, run by Ryan Macklin, who is one of the designers of Fate Core. So straight from the source, and uh, it really gives you a good idea of how the game functions and how it supports storytelling and role playing. So definitely worth a watch. It's very very different from more traditional role playing games like D&D. So if you want to look at what else is out there, what kind of games are possible, Fate Core is not the worst choice you could make. One of the better choices, instead. In fact, um, so this game has great basics, absolutely great basics, but some shortcomings, some holes that I need to patch, and I'm doing that mainly by using a game called Cthulhu Deep Green, which itself is a hack of a game called Cthulhu Dark. What am I writing? Cthulhu. Right? It's a hack of this game. And Cthulhu Dark is an extremely minimalist, very simple investigative role playing game, as the name implies, right? Cthulhu. And uses extremely simple mechanics. A bit too simple for my taste in this particular situation. I don't mind simple mechanics. I've played things like Lasers and Feelings and Everyone is John and Holy Heck. Uh, Lots of fun. But it's a bit too simple for what I'm trying to do here. Cthulhu Deep Green adds a bit of complexity to it, and very greatly it adds a whole it adds the whole risk reward system for for the mythos, right? For engaging with the mythos, which is exactly what I'm looking for. And it, it is set up for investigative games. It is set up for Cthulhu mythos, so a lot of the core mechanics in that game are amazing for really simulating the whole slow descent. It's not a slow descent into madness. It's more having your mind opened by the mythos and eventually having your mind snap because you've learned too much and you cannot handle it. Right? That kind of deal. And so this is the part I'm going to take. And also the PCs are not super competent, but PCs uh, are, I'm going to say, just skilled enough to do the tasks they can do. It treats success and failure in an interesting way. I have to see if I adapt that or not. Basically, there is no real way of failing because it does roles for information gathering, which is something I'm opposed to. Um, but I can adapt that easily enough to more general roles. Um, and so that's what I will look at. Um, and that's what I'm going to do with these two. So how does this combine? How does this combine? So what are the parts of a character? What is happening when players actually play this game? So from Fate Accelerated, we have aspects. Let me put it this way. So equals. Let me put this mechanics. It's very, very crude, but let me do this. So the mechanics would be things like character aspects. So what are character aspects? This is something from the Fate role-playing game, which is short descriptive sentences or phrases about the character that give a first look at who the character is, what kind of flaw or trouble they might have, what beliefs they might have, their relationship to other characters, and so on and so forth. These aspects can be anything, right? It could be old combat mechanic, or some grizzled old combat mechanic. That's an aspect. Or something like, oh, my mind is a little bit blank. I haven't created things like, or you can have an aspect like all eyes on me, right? Which means you are often the center of attention. Or you can have an aspect like nothing beats a hard day's work, right? So that's an attitude your character might have. And a lot of these are then written down as aspects like this, and these aspects actually have, they just from the phrasing you can see they are narrative, right? They deal with some sort of role-playing narrative aspect of your character, but their implementation is mechanical. When this aspect comes into play, good or bad, it has a mechanical effect. And this is the whole role-playing prompt happening. So you look at your character sheet and you see a bunch of aspects and you immediately get a picture of who this character might be. And then when you're playing the game, you say, oh, wait, my dude is a grizzled old combat mechanic. So, and I'm trying to fix this fuse box here. Shouldn't I get a bonus on that? It's like, yeah, certainly. And then the aspect has a very clear mechanical aspect, impact. Or if you have something like all eyes on me as an aspect and you're trying to be inconspicuous, trying to sneak into a bar and like talk to someone in secret, then the GM can say, but your character just stands out, all eyes on you, right? You're the center of attention wherever you go. It's like, true, probably not gonna be super successful in sneaking in. And how this plays out can be negotiated. Either you get stopped at every turn by people looking at you, or people are definitely going to remember your face that you went into that bar, or so many people take notice of you that whoever you're trying to see thinks the situation is too hot or notices you as well and doesn't want to talk to you, whatever, and then just leaves. Multiple ways this can play out. But this is then also a role-playing prompt. Right? The aspect shows you how you can develop the narrative or develop your character playing. And that's a really, really powerful thing. So you have character aspects. Very good. What you also get from Cthulhu Deep Green is stress plus insight. Hello? Stress plus insight. Which are two stats that you have. Stress being how well you deal with stressful situations, and insight being the whole opening your mind to the mythos. And the way this works in the game, and I love this mechanic so much, this is a really good risk-reward mechanic. It's basically, you roll a bunch of d6, right? You roll a bunch of d6, and one of these dice is special. It's the, whatever you want to call it, the dark die, the mythos die, the one that's a different color, right? And you want to roll high because rolling high means you get a good result, But if your called the mythos die, if your mythos die rolls higher than your current, say, insight, your insight goes up. So essentially how this works is it gives you a thing. It's like it gives you a bunch of conditions that then lead to an interesting choice. You want to roll many dice, right? Because the more dice you roll, the higher the chances that one of them will show a high number, right? You want a high number. And you can use your mythos die. If your mythos die shows a 6, then you can say, oh, I rolled a 6. Awesome. Now your skill check or whatever you're trying to do succeeds really well. But you don't. Oh my goodness, my writing. Don't want your mythos die to be higher than stress or insight. Because then those things will increase in value, and when they hit 6, bad things happen. Right? So you don't want to do that. Example, right? You roll a bunch of dice, you have something like a 3 here, and then a 5 here, and then a 1 here, and then you go, oh hey, I rolled a 5, but oh whoa, this was the mythos die that rolled a 5. And then you take this and you look at your insight, and your insight, hello, why is this not writing anymore? Your insight is at 4, right? 5 is greater than 4, therefore your insight becomes 5. And that's not good. You don't want your insight to climb too high. Right, so do you want to roll your mythos die? That's a choice you can make. At the beginning of a roll, you can say, do I want to add my mythos die? Yes or no. If I add it, I have an extra die. I might get a good roll on it. But if I do add it, there's a chance that it'll roll higher than my insight, and then my insight will rise. So, risk reward every time you make a roll. Same with stress, by the way, right? But those two numbers are independent. And I love this system. I really love this system because it gives the players a lot of choices, and it makes the consequences of this choice very visceral, very concrete. Okay. What else? The D6 die pool. D6 die pool mechanic, which is one of the simplest mechanics out there, depending on how you implement it. Sure, rolling a D20 or something like that is also very simple, but usually you have to do math to it. Right? You have to compare that number to some other number. You have to do math to it by adding or subtracting numbers. And that can be a barrier, right? To say nothing of people with dyscalculia, just in general, rolling a die, learning rules, being in this situation, role playing, and then suddenly saying, oh, I have to do math? What is +5 -3 and then another +2 and then compared to this number? I'm already lost. That can totally happen, right? It's performative stress. Performance stress, not performative. Performance stress, right? Definitely a thing. A d6 die pool, if you just say, roll a bunch of d6, look at the highest number. No math involved, relatively intuitive way of understanding more dice equals more better, right? Higher number equals more better. And that's it. So you don't know the exact probabilities. You don't have to, but you can understand if I have to roll a high number, I have a higher chance of doing so when I roll 3 dice than if I roll 2 or even 1, right? So that's intuitive, that's quick, and it's just looking for one number, and that's it. So that's why I like the D6 die pool, because or dice pool, I guess. D6 dice pool, because it is so quick and intuitive. And then what was the last thing? Aspects in general. I think. Da-da-da-da-da. So Fate gives good mechanics for cooperation and setup. Right. So just like how the characters in Fate have aspects, everything in Fate has aspects. The game itself has aspects. The scenario you're playing has aspects. The situation you're in has aspects. If you're in a dark cave, you might say it might have the aspects pitch black, and it might have the aspect slippery floors, right? And those aspects are there, and they can influence the way the game is played, and they can be channeled mechanically, right? If you are fighting someone in a cave, or if you're running from someone, right? Like if you're fighting someone, you might say, "Hold on, there's slippery floors here. So can I spend a point to start an ad?" I did not see that the ad was about to start. I'm really thinking about, instead of having 1.5 minutes of ads every half hour, have 3 minutes of ads every hour. I have to have some option like that. Like you have to run 3 minutes of ads per hour to eliminate pre-roll ads. That's what I'm trying to do here. But how you split them up is streamer's choice mainly, right? And I was thinking 1.5 minutes of ads every half hour. 1.5 minutes is not too long. It can work, but I've seen some people run 3 minutes of ads every hour with the reasoning that you get a longer chunk that's uninterrupted, and you can use the 3 minutes for break. Using 3 minutes for a break is much more feasible than using 1.5 minutes. 1.5 minutes is like, yeah, it's a nothing burger in that sense. Right? You can't take a proper break. But it's still long enough to disrupt the flow. So I am thinking about changing it to 3 minutes per hour, 3 minutes every hour instead of 1.5 every half hour. I think I'll do that after stream though. Change that around. Okay. So as I was saying, in Fate, everything has aspects. And if you're in a cave that is slippery floors, and you're fighting someone, you can say, "Can I spend a fate point to activate the slippery floors aspect," which applies to everyone who's standing on that floor, and get a bonus on my attack versus my enemy? Sure. Sure, that's exactly why the aspect slippery floors exists. Right? Of course, then the enemy fighting you can do the exact same thing. Spend a fate point to activate slippery floors against you and get a bonus on their attack, or make your defense roll worse, or whatever. Right? Totally doable. Or if you're running away in the cave, then the GM can slide over a fate point and say, yo, you know you are running on slippery floors, right? And then the player can accept the fate point and say, yeah, okay, I slip and break my fall with my face. And then take the fate point to spend for later. So there's a mechanical incentive for role playing a certain way. You don't have to do that, right? You can totally say, "Nah, I reject that. I don't take the fate point," or you may have to pay a fate point in return to reject it. I'm not 100%. I haven't played the game in long enough, or in too long to know exactly how fate handles it. And there's a bunch of other systems that run similar concepts. I think you can just say I reject the fate point, and that doesn't happen. Um, but yeah, so everything has aspects, and players or player characters can create aspects. Well, no, players can create aspects in a scene or in a situation, right? You can set a room on fire. You can say, all right, I want to spend my action setting the room on fire. And that effectively places a on fire aspect on the entire room. And now this aspect is here. Now people can use it. Um, and you can do that to cooperate with each other, to set up actions, right? So you like someone wants to sneak past a guard, so another PC walks up to the guard, engages the guard in some conversation, and then does that to place the aspect distracted on the guard. And then when the other character, the first character, sneaks past the guard, they can then use the distracted aspect on the guard to give themselves a bonus on their sneaking roll. And that is a beautiful system. Mainly because if you're playing Fate and you have your character aspects, you already understand how aspects work, or you will learn how aspects work just because your character has them. And then you can do aspects with everything, and that opens up so many possibilities. So I want to have this system. I will have to check if it needs to be toned down for horror and investigation. Maybe. But this is not influencing, like, this is not taking charge of the narrative so much as just doing things that your character could do anyway. And the GM can always veto, right? Saying, can I like throw some sand in the general direction of the monster and make the monster blinded? It's like, yeah, no, the monster doesn't work that way. That doesn't do anything. Um, so you can always do that, I guess. Um, yeah. So this is also using aspects, a very, very powerful system. Um, so these are the mechanics, the basic mechanics, uh, the basic mechanic list that I want in the game. And then some specifics of the mechanics would then be. Can I draw a straight line, please? There we go. So how does this work? Basically, the players have start out with um a concept aspect. So something like grizzled old combat mechanic. That is your concept, your character concept, right?
Then a flaw aspect, because flaws make characters interesting and make situations more tense. And then a free aspect that is something like attitude or belief or some special trait or whatever. Those were the all eyes on me or nothing beats a hard day's work, right? These kind of aspects. 3 is plenty. Fate core, and so say 5. I find sometimes 5 is a bit much. 3 is a good number to start with. You can always add more later, right? And then they have a stress value, stress and insight stats, right? Which both start at 0 out of 6. And then it is possible to have something like talents or so. I will have to see if that still has space on the sheet or in the system or not, but those are relatively easy to implement. And then how do the mechanics themselves work? So you roll. So the core resolution. And this one is taken more or less straight from Cthulhu Deep Green with some inspiration from other games like Tiny D6. So you roll a D6 dice pool, right? And you start with uh, let me see. Yeah, you start with 2d6. And then +1 per fitting, plus or -1 per fitting aspect. Right? So if your concept, for instance, can help you, right? You're a your combat mechanic trying to fix a generator. Okay, your aspect definitely helps you here. You get up d6. But also, if you say something like missing 3 fingers as your flaw, then any sort of manual dexterity work is not as easy for you. So if you're actually trying to fiddle with the wires and fix the generator, you get a -1 die, right, on your roll. So they cancel each other out in this case. But this is how you would look at aspects and say, no, actually, you don't get this. You get a -1 in your roll. And if it's reduced to 0, you don't get to roll at all, I guess. You have to do something else to improve your chances. Right? Such as create other aspects. If it's too dark, you need to light a candle. Right? And that creates the candlelight aspect. And then you can use that aspect to get a +1 on your roll. Things like that. Okay. And then you have the whole plus mythos. Whoops. Die. Right? If you want. This one is usually optional. So if you don't have enough aspects to get a good bonus, you can add the mythos die. I will have to see if you start with 1d6. But starting with 2d6 and having a bunch of aspects help out. And then the mythos die. Like, the mythos die needs to be a significant choice. Now that I'm thinking about the math here, I think, yeah, 1d6 is better. You just start with 1d6. Come on. Right. And then you modify it. And then you can add your mythos die. But if you add the mythos die, as we said above, chance of increasing stress or insight, which is something you do not want to do. And that's it. That is basically the core mechanic of the game. There are some other mechanics I can add. So things like what actually happens when your stress hits 6, right? When stress hits 6, right? Then what you do is gain a condition, which is a negatively slanted aspect, depending on what gave you that final point of stress. And then reset stress to 0. So as you go up, you gain more and more conditions that make your character more and more frazzled or scared or whatever. And then they become less and less able to effectively investigate. And then you can say, after 3 conditions or so, since this is a one-shot, I will have to toy with the numbers a little bit. After 3 conditions, player, not the player, the PC exits the adventure somehow. They die of a heart attack. They run away. They go catatonic. Whatever. Right? But they exit the adventure. So it's not, oh, I'm just racking up my 15th condition. I'm fine. That's not how it works. When insight, it's 6. Now, the idea here is in the original Cthulhu Deep Green, when your insight hits 6, that's it. Your character, their mind is completely busted from all the mythos knowledge they have gained, and they can't take it anymore. They exit the adventure. But I think it's more interesting to add something else. So what I can do here is gain a special talent. And that's why I want talents in the game, right? So when your mind is opened to the mythos, you can now do weird things. You can manipulate reality in a way that normal people cannot. Somehow, maybe you can use a magical artifact. Maybe you can cast a spell. Maybe you gain a special power. Something. Right? But there needs to be a downside to this, right? You don't want to just rush your insight and then gain that special talent. But, and this was my idea, roll, what is it? Add an insight die to every roll, right? Behaves like mythos die, only for insight. Right? So once your mind is open, sure, you can do some crazy things, but every single roll you make now has a chance of further raising your insight. It's no longer a choice. Before, you could always choose to include your mythos die, yes or no. After your insight hits 6 the first time, right, and then you reset insight to 0, right? Your insight will always have a chance of being raised. And then second time, right? PC exits adventure. So this now becomes a risk-reward kind of deal. Do you wish to risk opening your mind? It can give you an edge, but then your character is very likely to go crazy sooner rather than later, in some way, shape, or form. Or not go crazy. That's not a good way of phrasing it. That's a horrible way of phrasing it. But like having their mind blown to shreds by the mythos, effectively. Or do you want to play it safe? So I need some way of lowering stress or insight. Maybe not stress. Maybe stress is just ticking up all the time, and then that's just the cost of doing this kind of investigation. But insight, I need some way of lowering insight. Talents. This is where talents come in. Okay, so talents. Every character will have 3 talents. This is the first idea. Let me finish this idea and see if it's good or not. And then you can say, my insight is getting a bit high. I'm going to burn one of my talents to lower my insight. Right? So essentially, you lose access to that talent, which is a special thing that your character is really good at, a bonus on some rolls, or a special circumstance or special ability, etc. And you can say, I will burn one of them, get rid of one of them, and then lower my insight by 1 because I don't want to risk anything. Yeah, I think that's the easiest, straightforward way to do it. Right. So lowering insight. My handwriting is getting really bad. Each PC has 3 talents. It is, of course, possible to make a more narrative thing out of this, like they hurt someone or they do something rash or irrational, but that's a bit more difficult to put onto beginner players, right? And maybe that option can also be open, right? Either you burn a talent or you do something that negatively impacts yourself or others, and then you lose insight or you lower your insight. Burn 1 talent or act dangerously to lower insight. Oh my goodness. By 1. There we go. And the acting dangerously needs to think. Needs to be something consequential. right? Destroying a clue, for example. Accidentally murdering someone, for example, right? Um, Releasing a monster, something like that. It needs to be something actual, rash, consequential. Um, that makes the entire game more difficult for everyone narratively. Um, to lower insight by 1, right? So insight you can kind of control. Stress is just a timer. Stress just ticks up and up and up and up, and at some point your PC just can't take it anymore. And that's the timer of we need to finish this thing, right? Um, yeah, I think that's it. I think this is it. So let's go through the checklist. Low rules complexity? I think so. Uh, Chat, you could be judge as well. You can say, I don't understand what's going on. But I think you have a relatively easy and intuitive thing of, oh, I roll a bunch of dice, more dice, more better, right? And I roll. You need to roll high. Roll a high number. I didn't write that down, but yeah, roll a high number on any single die. Um, and that means you succeed, right? So I can go with something like Blades in the Dark, where I say 1 to 3, you don't succeed. 4 to 5, you succeed with some cost. At 6, you fully succeed. It's a very simple, good system. Um, and easier to interpret than taking each number individually, which is what Cthulhu Deep Green does. I find that a bit more difficult to pull off. Um, so yeah, you look at this, and then you also have stress that can rise with your mythos die, insight that can rise with your mythos die, and you don't want them to hit 6 necessarily, because them hitting 6 spells bad things for your character. And you have a way of mechanically controlling your insight value. Um, and the rest is just using these mechanics to do things like investigate, talk to people, create aspects, right? Break open doors, whatever it is, right? Search for a book, etc., etc. Um, so yeah, this is the core system, and I think this rule right here, this, let me mark this right here is where the role playing comes in. This here, and this here, and this here. So there's a couple of things where the role playing comes in, right? Conditions are aspects. So if your stress hits 6, you get more prompts onto how to roleplay your character. Aspects influence mechanics, so you want to use them, and that requires playing that way, right? Um, and acting dangerously is also a narrative role playing thing, but it has a mechanical impact. Okay, I like this. I am liking this system. Had a big um yeah, I think this is it. So this took all of like 20 minutes to design, and I spent 2 hours, 2.5 hours talking about role playing theory. I guess that's just how it goes. Um, so yeah, I now have a system. the weight off my shoulders. Now I can actually get to writing the adventure itself, knowing how the system will work, which is a big help. So yeah, I think we're done here. I think we're done. Yeah, we talked about what makes a good beginner system, and then we went through some more specifics. My mouse is breaking. And designed a system ourselves. Okay. I'll take it. All right. Yeah, I think we're done for today. Yeah. So, I hope this was educational or interesting or entertaining or all three, something. It was probably a bit rambly and ranty, but that's kind of what I do. um Let me see. Okay. Yeah, I'm done for now. So I think I will look for someone. For someone to raid. Let me open Twitch, please. Okay. So, this actual session will be played in March. It will be played evening March 13th, which is a Wednesday in US Canada time. Thursday morning-ish, March 14th, East Asia, which is the same time, because international dateline thing. That's the plan for the session. That's the schedule for the session. So I have until then to write the adventure. And yeah, that's I think it for today then. I will be back on Sunday, my Sunday, with more Baldur's Gate. And then I will have to see. I have some work related stuff next week, so I'll have to see how I can schedule my streams around that. No, I have to check. But yeah, I will put up a schedule as is possible. Okay. Let's see who's on. Who's on? Let's say hi to someone we say hi to a lot. That's because, cool bean, cool person in general. Let's go say hi to Code, who is currently doing Legend of Zelda, the original Legend of Zelda, in a challenge run, trying to do some retro achievements. So let's go say hi to Code. And yeah, thank you, Leo. Thanks for that. Thank you everyone for being here. I hope you were able to take something out of this. And that my rants weren't just annoying background noise. Thank you for streaming. Yeah, thank you for being here. It was nice seeing you again. Did I get the name right? I got the name right. Okay. So yeah, I will hopefully see you all again soon. Until then, yeah, take care and bye-bye.